Hey plant lovers, today we're going to talk about snake plants, which you might know by a few other names, including Sansevieria or mother-in-law's tongue. These guys gained a lot of popularity in the 1970s. They've maintained that popularity because they are known to be very, very easy to care for. And they're very versatile plants. They can thrive in anywhere from high light to even lower light conditions. Although I will say these guys, they really do love their sunlight. So while they can do well in low light conditions and they'll be fine there, you're really going to see the most optimal growth in a higher light setting. But we'll get into that a little bit later. First, I want to show you a little bit of the difference between growth in a high light and a low light setting. So let's take a look at that a little bit closer. This particular snake plant is my first one, and it started with me quite a while ago. That's Ellie in the background, my little kitty, by the way. But it started as a really small plant. It was, about this big around, just one of these little guys. And I got it as an office plant, as something easy to care for in one of my first office setting jobs. And it has grown into this kind of, big, tall, luscious beauty here. But one thing to take note of are the difference in the leaves. See this really skinny guy right here, how narrow the leaves are on this one? This is the type of growth that you get when the plant is in a lower light area. Now, this is a very healthy leaf all the way up to the top. Very beautiful, very healthy, but it is a much thinner leaf than ones that are grown in a higher light setting. And that is because they are constantly reaching for light. So they're not going to get as much thick growth down at the base of the stem if they're not in a low light area, versus some of the leaves that have been in higher light areas for most of their lives, like this guy right here, has a much thicker base on it, and you can see has grown thicker throughout its life because it was in a higher light growth area for much of its life, or much of its growth period, I should say. So there, you are going to get a little bit different growth pattern if you put this plant in a highlight area versus a lower light area. A little bit more about these guys. They are originally from Africa and other really warm climates. They're a succulent, so they do really prefer that highlight. Again, even though they gained their popularity as a plant that you could just beat up, okay? They tolerate abuse so well. There are often times when you'll go into an environment and you're like, is that a fake plant? Nope, it's a snake plant. All right, they're just incredibly hardy, and that's part of their popularity. Some folks will say that they're really good at cleaning the air. That's up for debate whether you believe that they make a significant difference or not. But one thing is for sure about these guys is that they're very easy to maintain and to take care of. Now, with that being said, they're a succulent. Succulents traditionally have much shallower roots than other plants do because they can't grow they typically don't grow deep tap roots down or a really intense deep root system down, because the water just doesn't penetrate that deep into the type of soil that succulents come from. And so when you have a smaller plant, you don't want to start them off in a really large pot because they won't be able to take in all of that moisture that's in the soil. So when you have a smaller plant, they typically don't do well in a really large pot. There's a lot of water that's wasted. Their roots won't do as well because they'll have overwater saturation, and they stay wet for a lot, much too long. Well, I made the mistake, and I don't want you to make this mistake. I made the mistake of getting a baby snake plant from my mom, this little guy. Now, he was, you can see my mistake. He was pretty small when I got him. This upper leaf right here was about the same height as the other one. Her snake plant mama gave birth to this little guy, and I put him in this big pot right here, and planted him and thought everything was going to go just fine. Well, unfortunately for me, what I didn't take into consideration was the fact that these guys, again, do not create very deep, widespread root systems because they're a succulent. And so this pot for this little plant was much too large. And what I've come to learn is that creates a lot of instability in his life, her life, whatever. So what we're going to do today is we're going to repot this little baby into a smaller pot. Even though he's doing well, he's healthy, but I want to get that root system a little bit bigger before we move him into this bigger pot. So we're going to move him into a much, much smaller pot for a little bit of a growing period, get him a little bit of a better root system, and then we'll transplant him into a larger pot that's a bit more gradual in growth because they prefer to be tighter in their pots than what I have established this guy. All right, so now we've repotted this guy into a much smaller pot, and that's gonna give him a much better chance of drying out properly and of growing those roots and of just establishing himself a little bit better than he was before. And when I pulled him out of that larger pot, when I got down to the bottom of that pot, it looked like the bottom, probably 1/3 of that pot, the soil was very wet down there, so it was not drying out properly. It was not gonna give this guy a good chance at drying out the way that it needed to for being a succulent. So we'll do an update on this guy in a little while, but after a good deep watering, putting him into a new spot, we're gonna move him to a sunnier spot. We'll see how he does.